Hi, my name is Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to expand on my short today about Rishi Sunak blocking Braverman's attempts to criminalise rough sleepers from being allowed shelter in the form of a tent. Just what is Braverman doing, and is she taking a line now whereby either she doesn't care whether she's sacked or not, or actively wants to be sacked? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So at the weekend, Braverman shot her mouth off again. I discussed this in a video already. She described largely peaceful protests as hate marches and said that everyone involved was hateful rather than just the very obvious pockets hiding themselves within the crowd. She also dismissed homelessness as a lifestyle choice and said that the tents of rough sleepers should be taken from them as we approach winter, and that charities who gave them out should be criminalised. We've gone from Priti Patel using the term do-gooder as an insult to Braverman really going to town on the evil, haven't we? I've said it before, it's really remarkable to think that Patel was not even close to the most inappropriate Home Secretary the Tories were capable of presenting us with. In terms of Braverman's follow-up behaviour, she seems to be applying pressure on the Met Police to block the planned march this weekend, even though it will not be taking part anywhere near the Armistice Day events. There's absolutely no justification for it. And on the homelessness comments, she seemed to fully intend to go ahead with her plan to criminalise the use or distribution of tents for the homeless. It was reported today that Rishi Sunak blocked the plans from appearing in the King's speech. It seemed that it was too insane even for a Prime Minister who got the King to announce that the Tories weren't going to do anything to improve their lives before the election. It's also clear that Braverman is struggling for cabinet support. Alex Chalk was today's cabinet minister to face the media round. A very difficult position to be in, my sympathies. Ministerial responsibility requires you to sort of seem united, so you can't just disown your ministerial colleagues. So, you're presented with a situation where you've got to think, right, how do I present this to the journalist in a way that says what she said was completely wrong without saying what she said was completely wrong? So Chalk, just like the others, doesn't have the freedom to come right out and say, do you know what, that Braverman's off her head. Don't know what she's thinking. But they still have to make clear that, no, we don't agree with the statements as you understand them. Chalk refused to back Braverman's position on both homelessness and the pro-Palestinian marches. In fact, he said that although there were clearly some espouting hate there, others were just expressing anguish at the untold suffering. On homelessness, he said it was clearly not an informed choice. So awkward situation for cabinet ministers that is traditionally avoided by making sure that ministers, especially cabinet ministers, are not contradicting the agreed party lines on important policy areas. It's called ministerial responsibility. And if a minister insists on making up their own policies without getting that wider agreement first, then they can resign or be sacked. And on a slight tangent, there was a Cobra meeting this afternoon to discuss the heightened terror threat as a result of the conflict in the Middle East. And the aim was, according to a report in the Mirror, this was ahead of the meeting, it was to discuss community cohesion. Now, would we regard Suella Braverman's behaviour as being supportive or destructive where community cohesion is involved? I would say it's quite clear, and in fact, a former Conservative, influential Conservative Baroness Warsi has said it more explicitly. Suella Braverman tries to pit communities against themselves. That's what she does all the time. So I would suggest that many of the experts present in that meeting today, if they were discussing community cohesion, would not regard Suella Braverman as helpful. And when Sunak reappointed her last year to Home Secretary, I did wonder if he'd be able to control her, because she was already a loose cannon under Liz Truss. She was contradicting government policies at the party conference. And the risk was always there for Sunak unless he exercised more control. But he hasn't. It's also quite clear why Braverman's doing this. Ultimately, it's because she's working on her pitch to replace Sunak good and early. I've said that, it's insane to have such a senior government position occupied by someone who has a vested interest in their party losing the next election. I mean, let's say the Tories won the next election. Well, Sunak's secure for a bit, isn't he? He can still be replaced. Of course he can. Boris Johnson was replaced. But it would at the very least delay Braverman's plans. So she wants the party to lose, and she wants it to lose it good and hard. Because when the election is lost, the party inevitably has to reflect on its failures. The Conservative Party will have to accept that it has failed. That means they will have to conclude that the direction adopted by the party leading up to the election was the wrong one. Okay? So, in order to replace Sunak, Braverman feels that she has to be at odds with the current direction. However, it's not as simple as saying so, because she can't appear to be disloyal or to be contributing to the election loss. So she tries to present an image of someone who publicly backs her leader, but keeps having her policies undermined by the same leader. When the election is lost, she'll be able to claim it was because her ideas were being shot down by people who were just too weak. Her ideas do not seem out of touch with party members either, as far as I can tell. The latest Conservative Home League table rates her, although there are potential leadership rivals rated more highly. James Cleverly's out in front at now, but that'll just be because he's now got a role to play in the Middle East crisis. That's all. Braverman's good but limited rating may be related to the fact that her government department is very obviously failing on both crime and immigration, as Conservative members would see it. So she'll need to claim that this was only because she was being blocked from implementing her policies properly, that she was forced to proceed with a hand tied behind her back, but she soldiers on like a good loyal Tory, making the best of a bad job for the sake of the country and the party. You know all that. That'll be her pitch. That's the only way to get the only way to get things done, she'll say, is to give her the final say on policies, for which, of course, she will need to be the leader of the party. Now, I personally think the party membership is crazy enough to go along with it. Braverman's taken advantage of the fact that no other cabinet minister has her leeway to be so obviously campaigning for the leadership. You know, we know Kemi Badenoch wants to be in the mix there. She's not been as blatant as this. We know that there are others as well. They're not being. Only she is very, very clearly pitching to be the next leader. You know, and at the very least, I think she's in a position where she doesn't mind being sacked. Although an article in The Independent today goes further, it quotes a former government advisor saying that Braverman is actively trying to bait Sunak into sacking her. I don't think they've got any special insight. I think that's just how they read it, but it's entirely possible. It sort of reminds me of a few teaching experiences, not great ones. You know, you've got a naughty kid and you know, sometimes you know they're trying to get themselves kicked out of the class because they've arranged to meet with another friend in a different class in isolation, right? So when you suspect that's what they're up to, stubborn little bastard like me just acts out of spite and refuses to go along with it. So they then try and ramp up the bad behaviour in an attempt to force your hand. Now, at this point, it essentially comes down to boundaries. If they have some boundaries, it doesn't really work. But if they don't, if they are actually proper nutters, then it's like they're going to end up killing someone if you don't. So you do actually have no choice. Braverman strikes me as the kid without boundaries. So if she really does want to be sacked, and I can see a potential logic there, way easier to run her leadership campaign from the back benches, and she'd have more time to do so as well. If it is what she wants, I can just see her throwing a political hand grenade every couple of weeks until Sunak finally relents and decides that she's actually less of a bother on the back benches than in cabinet. What I'm sure Sunak will want to avoid is the potential for another fracture line to appear in the party ahead of the next election. Not necessarily because he cares about the election result. I don't really believe he does. But because it might destabilise the party enough to force an election before he's extracted maximum financial benefit for his family. So we may now have a situation whereby Braverman keeps ramping up the crazy to try to get Sunak to sack her. And Sunak's thinking, I really don't want to sack her because that's going to create a hell of a mess. You know, and so she has to keep ramping it up until he's forced to realise that it's just dragging his government's reputation down too far. Or maybe, as I suggest, she doesn't care one way or the other. She doesn't care whether she gets sacked or not. She's just focusing full time on appealing to a few tens of thousands of lunatics who make her party leader when Sunak resigns. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.